Hello and welcome to Enactus UK's first online training. We're just going to share the screen with you now to make sure it works. This is our first training online, something we've wanted to do for a while. So we hope it helps. We have delivered this criterion training at Team Leader Training and Summer Action, but this has all of our updated information and resources mentioned in it. It's being put together by the Enactus UK programme staff, and we'd like you to share it with all of your members so that they can understand the criterion. Just let the three programme managers introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Rachel.
Hi, I'm Holly.
Hi, I'm Glenn.
And now we will start the training. My name, for those of you that didn't know, is Becca, and I'm the National Programme Director.
Why do we have a criterion? The criterion should be at the centre of all Enactus projects. The same criterion is used across the world, meaning that all 36 Enactus country programmes operate following the same guidelines. The criterion is not just for the purpose of judging competition. It gives you direction in your projects. It allows your support network to better understand what advice to give you, and it allows you to create a framework to base your projects on. It is what Enactus challenges you to do, to create a better world. As of this academic year, the project criterion has been improved, and this is the new terminology which is being used. Which Enactus team most effectively used entrepreneurial action to empower people to improve their livelihoods in an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable way? Now, we are going to break down this criterion into sections to explain what it means.
Firstly, we are going to focus on the people your projects work with. Here, the old criterion used to say people in need, which meant Enactus teams often focused on classifying the type of need, what their beneficiaries' issues were, and how they were going to help them. It also meant Enactus teams believed they had to work with the poorest, the most needy in their communities, which is not true. An example of where you should focus on the person, not the biggest needs, is if your team wishes to run a project with offenders, it is not always appropriate to work with the people in prisons who may be seen as the biggest need group. If you work with the people once released from prison, you can have a much larger impact on them, as when they are in prison, your impact will be limited by their circumstances. By focusing on the beneficiaries, these are the kind of questions you should be thinking about. Who can you help? Who are you passionate about helping? What skills and resources do you have? Once you have identified which people your team and your members are best equipped to work with, you need to understand their situation, build their trust and get to know them, and complete a needs and wants assessment. The template is available on the Enactus UK resources webpage, and we're going to explain more about it now.
A needs and wants assessment is essential for meeting the criterion and can be a confusing stage of the project. Firstly, what is a needs assessment? This is the stage of the project where you get to know your beneficiaries so you can determine what their issues are, their needs, and what their desired outcomes are, their wants. It is a detailed process to map out the situation of each of the people that you work with. To access the template of a needs and wants assessment, please log on to the Resource Centre and download it under the Project tab. The example includes key questions and that need to be answered, such as what is going on in the local area, what are the desired outcomes of the individual, and what livelihood assets do they currently possess. By doing this, it will allow you to collate all the information and tailor an entrepreneurial solution to meet the people's desired outcomes. Once you have downloaded the form and adapted it to suit your project and your local area, you need to create a plan of how you're going to gather this information. This can be carried out in a number of ways, such as interviews, surveys, panel discussions, or even researching on the internet. However, to ensure it is in line with the people's needs and wants, it is key to include beneficiaries in this assessment and not rely on project partners to inform you of what they think their situation is. For a detailed needs and wants assessment, you should try to include as many stakeholders as possible. These include beneficiaries, key Enactus team members, community leaders, businesses involved in the project, other people who are knowledgeable about the community, experts who have experience with the type of beneficiaries you're working with, and for continuing projects, be sure to include previous beneficiaries as well. Once fully prepared, complete your assessment.
Here are some key things to remember when carrying out your needs and wants assessment. Do not assume anything. The theory of change will be another training session we provide which minimises the assumptions you make. Do not try to rush this stage of the project. It can take months to build a relationship with someone so that they feel comfortable to disclose personal information. Do repeat throughout the project. Situations can change, so you need to be able to adapt your solution. Complete on an individual basis. Everyone's situations are different, so record each of their own needs and wants. Get experts involved to give their opinions on the beneficiary group. Most importantly, involve your beneficiaries. It sounds simple, but in the past, lots of teams have taken the word of the project partner and then found out later they weren't given the right information. Then once you've completed a needs and wants assessment, use this information to tailor your solution to your beneficiaries' particular situations. This is where the most effective projects are built around the needs of individuals instead of coming up with a solution and trying to fit it to a need.
After understanding the people you're working with by completing your needs and wants assessment, you have to think about using entrepreneurial action. All Enactus projects should take an entrepreneurial approach in how they come up with their solution and how they implement it. Entrepreneurial action is not solely about creating entrepreneurial ventures or helping entrepreneurs. It is about being entrepreneurial in how you develop and deliver your solution. For example, is your project being resourceful and taking advantage of what is available in its surrounding? Is it being innovative, taking an idea and going beyond what has already been done before and creating a new, improved solution? Is it being creative, adaptable, opportunistic? By being entrepreneurial, you should be transferring relevant concepts and skills. These skills can be any which are seen to be useful and empowering for your beneficiaries. An improvement from the previous criterion is that now you can transfer any relevant concepts, not just business and economic ones. You are not restricted, which means you can truly empower people by transferring any type of relevant knowledge or skill, no matter what the subject.
But what is empowerment? Now we're going to focus on what it means to empower someone. A beneficiary has been empowered when they take the skills and knowledge you have given them and implement them in their lives independently. Think about the analogy, give a man a fish he can eat for a day, teach a man a fish and he can eat for a lifetime. This individual has been empowered as they continue to use the skills long after the trainer is gone. This means that to create an empowering project, you cannot simply improve things for the beneficiary, hand it over to them and then leave. What if something goes wrong? If you did it without their input, they won't know how to fix it. Direct empowerment requires communication, collaboration, and understanding and challenging long-existing assumptions about what outcomes people desire. To understand what desired outcomes your beneficiaries are aiming for, you have to understand what assets they do and do not have, and this is where the livelihood model comes in.
This is the Enactus project process, and it is a good model to follow. It is broken down into seeing opportunity, taking action, and enabling progress. You can also break the livelihoods model down into these three sections. To start with, it is important to understand what a livelihood is. A livelihood is simply the means and activities involved in sustaining an individual's life. In the UK, a livelihood is typically used to describe someone's job. Please remember, Enactus projects are not using livelihoods in this context. A livelihood is fueled by livelihood assets. Livelihood assets fall under the Seeing Opportunity section of the project process, which is about identifying people and performing a needs and wants assessment. There are 5 livelihood asset categories: financial, natural, social, human, and physical. There are examples of types of each asset on the screen. Many people struggle to identify the difference between social and human. The way to think about these assets is to think of social as about people and their relationships, whilst human is everything within or inside the person. So human examples would include knowledge, ability, or language. Water can be seen as a natural or physical asset, and that is for you to determine within your project. If it is a natural source of water, then it would be a natural asset. However, if you're using a filtration system for the water supply, then it is a physical asset. Examples have been provided for what might come under each asset, but you are also encouraged to think beyond what has been provided and really consider all assets within your project. Please note, projects do not have to address all asset areas. Often the more you do, the more holistic solution you will be creating, and also the more entrepreneurial solution you can come up with.
Everybody has access to at least one livelihood asset. However, some people have better access than others. You should be looking to identify what assets an individual does have and how best you can use them. It is not always about giving them an asset they didn't have previously. An example to show you that everyone has an asset is, if I was hungry, the asset I don't have is food. However, I could either use a financial asset of money to buy some food, or I could use a social asset, such as the relationship with my mum, to ask her to cook me some food. Therefore, in that situation, you identified what they didn't have, but you also analyse what assets they do have and how to best use them. Another example is if you identify someone only has access to dirty water. Previously, this would have been seen as their need. However, now you can identify that dirty water is an asset. Then you need to come up with a solution that uses that asset, such as introducing a water filtration system, so they can improve that asset to be clean water. You will identify the assets your beneficiaries do and do not have by conducting a needs and wants assessment. As explained earlier, this will also help you identify the beneficiaries' desired outcomes. By identifying the assets and desired outcomes an individual has, this will help you in building their livelihood strategy.
The next step after identifying the livelihood assets is to take action by creating and implementing an empowering entrepreneurial solution, a livelihood strategy. Livelihood strategies are choices people make and the activities they do to desire their outcomes. Your Enactus project will help your beneficiaries with the livelihood strategy so they can improve their assets and reach their desired outcomes. Your solution in your Enactus project centers around creating livelihood strategies for your beneficiaries. When creating your solution, you should look into investigating what people are already doing. This could be your beneficiaries, project partner, or key local organisations. It is essential that you take a collaborative approach, not only with your project partner, but also with your beneficiaries. By involving beneficiaries at every stage of your project plan, you can ensure that essential buy-in. If these individuals have invested directly into the project, when you reach the point of stepping away, it is more likely to continue to be a success. The livelihood strategy is central to achieving empowerment. In order to move your beneficiaries into a state of independence, they must be empowered to utilise the knowledge and skills they have been taught, but also feel confident enough to obtain assets by themselves in the future.
The final step in this model is to enable progress, which centres around livelihood outcomes. At this stage, you must conduct your sustainability evaluation and impact measurement. In order to measure the impact of your livelihood strategy, you must know where you started and track progress throughout the project. You can identify the relevant livelihood outcome categories to determine how best to measure your impact. The desired outcomes of your livelihood strategy must be identified by the beneficiary during your needs and wants assessment. Throughout the project, you are evaluating whether you have helped your beneficiaries reach their desired outcomes. This evaluation should be done on an individual basis, as everyone's desired outcomes will be different and they will all progress at different rates. You need to be aware that livelihood assets may be affected positively or negatively by achieving desired livelihood outcomes. For your project to be sustainable, you have to ensure that your beneficiaries are aware of how some of their assets may be negatively affected for them to achieve their desired outcome. For example, if a beneficiary is starting up a business, their desired outcome is for it to succeed. However, to achieve this, their social assets might be negatively affected if they don't have as much time to spend with their family. You need to account for these negative implications where you can and ensure your beneficiary is aware of what will be affected whilst trying to achieve their desired outcomes. When other people's assets are being negatively affected, that is not sustainable, and your solution needs to account for that and minimise that happening.
One way to measure how you improve livelihoods is by measuring your outputs and outcomes. Your outputs are everything your team puts out for the project. This might be time or hours involved, money invested, or the number of workshops conducted. By measuring outputs, you can prove your team's impact. Whilst the outcomes are the benefits or changes for your beneficiary as a result of your outputs, examples might be the beneficiary now earns an income, has developed new skills, or has gained employment. Livelihood outcomes are broken down into the same 5 categories as your livelihood assets: financial, natural, social, human, and physical. One outcome may cover multiple assets. For example, if your project provides employment for your beneficiary, this may have been given them an income, provided them with new skills, and meant they had built relationships, which falls into 3 different outcome categories: financial, social, and human. Again, this is for you to determine.
The last part of the criterion states that your project must be carried out in an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable way. This is sometimes known as the triple bottom line concept of people, profit, planet. You can measure the positive impact you're having, such as the amount of funding you raise, the amount of people you integrate in society, or the amount of materials you recycle. But you also need to plan how you're considering the possible negative impact of your project in all 3 areas and how you're accounting for that. Some examples include economically. If you are launching a business and it's successful, are you putting anyone else out of business? If yes, you have to consider the negative economic impact on someone else's life. Socially, if you're empowering women in a new enterprise, have you considered any how any male partners feel. They may feel excluded and that their role to earn an income has decreased. So you would need to account for this negative social impact on the men. Environmentally, if your project is creating a product, how does it affect the environment? Are you minimising the waste created? Considering and accounting for positive, negative impacts throughout your project ensures its sustainability.
But there are other things to consider to ensure the sustainability of your project. What areas of vulnerability are there in the project? Would it be flexible to adapt to any shocks or unexpected changes in the situation? Some examples of shocks are price changes, seasonality of products, extreme weather, and high beneficiary dropout. What resources are being drained by the project? To be sustainable, it should be using abundant resources which are readily available, not resources which are rare. However, the final part is to ensure the project can function for future years. It should be a long-term project and function when your Enactus team steps back, meaning that to make it sustainable, you have to empower your beneficiaries to utilise the knowledge independently and can always hand over the responsibility of the project to a project partner organisation.
So that is it. So same as the last section. We hope you have a better understanding of it.